The whole religious community, including his congregation, is in shock over a confession made by Pastor Jamal Bryant, whose name is synonymous with religion and leadership. His revelations regarding his personal life are startling, surprising, and quite unthinkable to some. The truth behind this revelation is much more intense than anyone could have ever anticipated, so stay with us. And you won't be able to speak after hearing the specifics. For many years, Pastor Jamal Bryant has been regarded as a leader and a pillar of faith, motivating many with his public appearances, outreach, and sermons. However, a personal conflict has been taking on behind the pulpit, one that has now been revealed in a confession that has shocked a lot of his churchgoers. We will dissect every aspect of Pastor Bryant's personal life disclosures in this video. You will learn about what transpired before this revelation, how his peers and congregation responded, and how it might affect his ministry and public image. You'll be shocked by what transpired next. And, because the discoveries go far beyond mere gossip, this is when things start to become really intriguing. You will learn why this confession is significant, what it tells about the guy behind the ministry, and why it has generated discussions on news sites and social media. By the end of this video, Pastor Jamal Bryant is well known for his inspiring sermons and leadership in the community, as well as a significant presence in the religious community. Few people outside of his inner group were aware of the personal challenges that lurk beneath the public persona. Bryant put up a show of unflinching self-assurance and spiritual authority for years, but according to reports, he was dealing with issues in private that had a significant impact on his personal life. Insiders claim that there was a great deal of tension because of the strain of upholding a well-known ministry while managing difficult personal situations. According to reports, close friends and advisors observed minor shifts in his behavior, quiet times for introspection, obvious stress, and times of introspection that pointed to more serious emotional issues. The fact that these private conflicts were being kept out of the public spotlight served to emphasize that even well-respected leaders may encounter unspoken difficulties. The timing of the confession is what makes this narrative so captivating. According to the sources, a series of public and personal events led to Bryant feeling compelled to come forward. The choice was not taken hastily. He considered the possible effects on his church, his reputation, and how his ministry was seen. According to friends, he got to the point where speaking was no longer an option, and the only way to move forward was to be honest. This context's emotional component is vital. There is more to Pastor Bryant's confession than just disclosing a secret. It captures the human complexities of a figure that many people consider to be larger than life. It exemplifies the demands of spiritual leadership, the stresses of leadership, and the frequently concealed human fragility. Millions of viewers may be able to relate to Bryant's decision to speak out, since it provided a window into the realities of striking a balance between one's personal life and one's public responsibilities. This is where it becomes even more fascinating. According to insiders, this revelation was just the start. There are hints that further information might surface in follow-up interviews, remarks on social media, or speeches. These unspoken details heighten the tension, leaving fans and onlookers curious to see what further might come to light regarding his personal life and the events leading up to this shocking revelation. Pastor Jamal Bryant meticulously balanced his private life and public preaching for many years. Congregants witnessed a leader who was passionate and steadfast behind closed doors, but he also had to overcome obstacles that required cautious handling. According to sources, a confluence of personal and professional circumstances ultimately led to a tipping point, which compelled him to make a shocking confession to his community. Insiders claim that a sequence of introspection and discussions with key advisors marked the beginning of the pivotal moment. According to reports, Bryant thought about the consequences of disclosing his personal difficulties for weeks. He was aware that any revelation might have an impact on both his church and the general public. However, he also understood that hiding the truth may compromise his integrity and well-being. He apparently had strong moments of introspection during this time regarding his duties as a public figure and a spiritual leader. His friends and confidants observed that he grew more reflective and sought advice on how to manage his personal affairs without upsetting his admirers. The emotional strain of managing a sizable congregation, growing expectations, and ongoing media attention all contributed to this internal conflict. The choice to come forward was also influenced by a crucial private discussion with a family member or close coworker, according to insiders. This person urged Bryant to be open and honest, not as a show of weakness, but as an act of bravery and moral rectitude. It was proposed that speaking his truth would benefit others by encouraging them to confront their own difficulties honestly rather than in private. The confession did not come out right away. According to sources, Bryant meticulously prepared the timing, crafting his message and delivery to make sure it would strike the right chord. According to reports, he wished to steer clear of sensationalism and instead emphasize accountability, honesty, and introspection. This thorough planning demonstrates how difficult the choice was. There was more to it than simply spilling a secret. It was about maintaining credibility, trust, and the spiritual direction he offers. This is the startling aspect that many people did not expect. According to insiders, there were times when the weight of quiet was too much to bear. It got to the point where the emotional strain of keeping personal problems hidden started to have an impact on both his vocation and personal life. Not as a scandalous moment, but as a necessary step toward spiritual and personal clarity, the confession became unavoidable. The mood was a mixture of shock, incredulity, and empathy when Pastor Jamal Bryant finally spoke to his congregation and revealed details about his personal life. Those in attendance recount an almost unreal moment when the preacher spoke out on previously well-guarded parts of his personal life. Few people had ever seen a person of his stature make such a confession with such humility, sincerity, and underlying vulnerability. Witnesses said that Bryant started by admitting the pressure of his role as a spiritual leader and the demands made of him. He acknowledged that sustaining a faultless public character has occasionally clashed with his internal struggles. He silently negotiated extremely personal challenges for years, juggling demands that would have tried anyone with his dedication to his church, ministry, and faith. Among the most remarkable features of his admission was his readiness to accept responsibility. Bryant was not afraid to own up to his faults or to admit when he thought he had failed to live up to his spiritual and personal standards. His church members were immediately moved by this unprecedented degree of openness and commended him for his bravery. Seeing a leader publicly acknowledge their vulnerabilities was both startling and motivating for many. The responses were quick and diverse. Congregants' expressions ranged from surprise and anxiety to tears of empathy. Many expressed their respect on social media, pointing out that the confession reaffirmed the humanity of a person who is frequently viewed as larger than life. Discussions concerning faith, the nature of leadership, and the fact that even people in positions of spiritual authority experience personal difficulties were spurred by it. Media sources immediately began to promote the confession's content, as well as the emotional reaction it produced. The effects on his ministry, how the public saw his leadership, and the wider message his transparency conveyed about integrity and responsibility were all examined by journalists and pundits. While some questioned the timing and the effects on his flock, others applauded the confession as a daring act that dispels the stigma associated with vulnerability. Following the confession, there were private follow-up talks with church elders and advisors, according to insiders. These conversations focused on how to resolve issues, assist the pastor, and keep building the congregation's trust. This covert assistance was essential in making sure that the confession enhanced, rather than diminished, his authority. This is where many people were taken aback. Bryant made hints that his admission was just a small portion of a larger process of introspection and development. He hinted that he would keep revealing personal anecdotes in the future, not to make his life more dramatic but to help and inspire people going through similar struggles. Congregants and the general public were both excited to see what new information would be revealed as a result of the increased suspense this created. Following its public release, Pastor Jamal Bryant's confession swiftly rose to the top of news outlets and social media's conversation lists. In a matter of hours, the tale gained national attention and extended well beyond his small community. A mixture of astonishment, empathy, disappointment, and admiration were evident in the responses. It was evident that Bryant's candor had sparked a conversation that went well beyond the boundaries of his congregation. The first to emerge were social media sites. Timelines were overflowing with viewpoints, intimate tales, and emotional reactions from Instagram photos and Twitter threads. Many people commend Pastor Bryant for his courage, highlighting the fact that accepting responsibility and owning up to one's shortcomings is the path to true strength. One user said, "Finally, a pastor who keeps it real," which struck a deep chord with people who believe that religious leaders frequently conceal their imperfections. His honesty, according to his supporters, made him more approachable, human, and even more successful as a leader. Not every answer, though, was favorable. Some critics suggested that some things should be kept private and questioned the timing and necessity of the confession. Some pundits charged Bryant with employing openness as a tactic to regain public confidence following earlier scandals. Online, these arguments produced a divisive environment where it was difficult to distinguish between public opinion and accountability. However, even his detractors acknowledged the emotional impact of his candor and the bravery required to talk so candidly. Reaction videos also overtook TikTok and YouTube. Every phrase of the confession was broken down by influential people, pastors, and analysts who examined its implications for contemporary church leadership. Numerous people noted that Bryant's disclosure might lead to a more widespread cultural change in religious settings, inspiring more pastors and leaders to face their personal difficulties head-on rather than hiding them behind a facade of perfection. In the era of social media and openness, some even contended that this moment would completely alter the way that spiritual leadership is viewed. Reactions within his own church community were very intimate. Members expressed a range of feelings, including shock at the admission, pride in his integrity, and a fresh sense of devotion to their leader. Some claimed that because of Bryant's candor, they felt closer to him than ever before and were reminded that everyone, regardless of status, experiences hardships that challenge their faith. The confession's emotional fallout sparked a number of moving discussions among the congregation, with several members saying that the experience assisted them in facing their own personal problems. The reaction from the media was just as strong. News organizations analyzed Bryant's remarks and speculated about the long-term effects on his reputation in headlines that combined empathy and sensationalism. Online articles, podcasts, and television shows discussed the more significant issues. After disclosing personal shortcomings, can a spiritual leader still be considered credible? Is honesty a unifying or divisive factor in religious communities? Bryant's name returned to national prominence as a result of these conversations, but this time with a far more contemplative than critical perspective. The way the confession became a kind of movement was perhaps the most remarkable feature of the public reaction. Individuals from various religions started talking about their personal struggles with sin, imperfection, and salvation. Bryant's epiphany appeared to relate to a common human experience, the conflict between one's internal reality and public expectations that cut across denominational lines. This is where it becomes even more fascinating. According to insiders, Bryant's admission might have encouraged other religious leaders to think about being as transparent. According to reports, a number of pastors privately thanked him for leading by example and promoting more open communication in ministry circles. His act of vulnerability may have a lasting impact and alter the definition of spiritual leadership for years to come, according to this ripple effect. The fallout from Pastor Jamal Bryant's confession, which went viral on social media and made headlines, was nothing short of revolutionary for him, his church, and the larger religious world. What started out as a private confession turned into a public discussion about honesty, openness, and the challenges of spiritual leadership in a time when everything is closely watched. Members of his congregation spoke of an emotional environment that was full of introspection and rejuvenation in the days that followed. Attendance was unchanged. It actually grew. Those who had wandered away came back, interested to see what sort of leader Bryant would develop after he showed such vulnerability. His confession, according to many, revolutionized what faith meant. No longer something that needed to be flawless, but rather something based on integrity and fortitude. Discussions were intensely introspective within the church. Ministers and elders talked about the value of accountability in leadership. As they related their personal hardships, congregation members came to understand that their pastor's openness had created a space for healing. There was no scandal that surfaced. It was a show of solidarity. A moment that might have split them apart gave rise to a revitalized feeling of community. Paradoxically, Pastor Bryant had become more sincere rather than less credible. However, the road ahead is still complicated. There is still disagreement among the public. His confession is viewed by supporters as an act of faith and courage. However, detractors continue to express skepticism, arguing that such insights can divert attention from spiritual goals. However, Bryant still manages to strike a balance between his personal humanity and his civic duty, recognizing that being a leader requires both grace and scrutiny. Bryant stressed in interviews after the revelation that his objective was both individual and group healing rather than damage control. He discussed the perils of hiding the truth for the sake of appearances, emphasizing that many leaders bear quiet difficulties because they are afraid of being judged. His words struck a deep chord. Nobody is exempt from failure or hardship, not even those tasked with leading others. It was an exhortation to pursue growth without denial, and to accept imperfection without shame. Additionally, the confession triggered a subtle change in the direction of his ministry. Sermons became more introspective and focused on themes of emotional honesty, forgiveness, and redemption. His words seemed to have a deeper meaning now, according to the congregation, as if every word were weighed down by personal experience. The once polished portrayal of a far-off preacher has changed to one of a sympathetic individual who shared his faith while navigating his personal tribulations. The tone of social media also started to soften. Although his early detractors had doubted his intentions, many started to reconsider their opinions after seeing his ongoing humility and openness. Bryant transformed what may have been a moment of collapse into a testament to resiliency by leaning into his message rather than hiding or withdrawing from public life. His handling of the fallout served as a model for humble leadership. Even more intriguing is the way his story inspired discussion in religious communities other than his own. The emotional toll of leadership became a topic of open discussion among pastors, churchgoers, and spiritual intellectuals. Online debates and podcasts examined how religious organizations may change to better serve their leaders. Unexpectedly, Bryant's vulnerable moment served as a catalyst for cultural change and a lesson that real power comes from having the guts to face the truth rather than from denying it. Additionally, Bryant seemed to have found peace as a result of this revelation. He seems more grounded, more present, and more deliberate in his words and deeds. According to insiders close to him, his goal seemed to have become clearer to those around him. As though the burden he bore in quiet had now been removed, he regained both his integrity and his sense of freedom by confronting his truth head-on. The future is still up in the air. The way things go from here will determine whether this chapter enhances or detracts from his legacy. However, one thing is for sure. The way that people view Pastor Jamal Bryant has altered as a result of his confession, and possibly the general perception of leaders. It made the public face difficult realities about faith, humanity, and the demands we have of those who lead us.